for joining us. I believe we are now live across all of our socials. Please note that for that going forward. So really excited today to be bringing not one, not two, not three, but four incredible leaders of their businesses, really looking at the really practical steps in why and how companies expand to a new region. So today we're joined by Tom from Daxium, Adrian from Fresher, Marek from Navi Parking, and Soraya from Crimson Education. I'll give each of them a time to introduce themselves and a little bit about their business. But really, hopefully today's sessions is really trying to take some really practical tips and understanding about how a business looks at a new region and then makes that jump. And I think for a lot of businesses, it can be quite a daunting jump to, I suppose, leave the pond that you're quite welcome and knowledgeable in to take that step and expand into a new region. So really excited to hear some from really people who have been there and done that and really been on the front line. So thank you everyone for joining us today. A little bit about Astro Labs. We are a co-working and licensing company. We help businesses from around the world and entrepreneurs from the region set up and build their companies in the UAE and the GCC region. I'll put my details in the chat. My name is Cairo at astrolabs.com. Anyone who's interested in looking at setting up a business or expanding a business, please reach out to me and we'd love to help and support. So thank you everyone and welcome. So I just hope to ask each of you just to give a couple of minute introduction to who you are and the business you are, and I suppose where you came from before you were at Dubai. Should we start with you, Adrian?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Cairo. First off, nice to meet everybody. Some familiar faces and others that aren't, so always nice to kind of connect. So I've been in Dubai for about 9 years now. Before that, I'm originally from the Boston area in the US. I came out here. I've done a variety of businesses, but most recently, before Fresha, I was leading the commercial team in the UAE and Kuwait for Deliveroo, and then joined Fresha as GM for the UAE about 1.5 years ago now, and actually been using Dubai as our base for expanding into Australia, US, and Canada from here, now that in the whole new world of remote working / COVID. So it's been kind of exciting with those developments happening. Fresha as a business, for those of you who aren't familiar, we're a software or a SaaS-enabled marketplace, which has a software component and online booking tools for the beauty and wellness industry. So we primarily focus on partners that are spas, barbershops, salons, skin clinics, the whole spectrum. And our offering enables them to both have a cloud first or a digital first way to manage their business, as well as enable them to generate revenue from online channels, which is typically something that most of our partners, if they're familiar with, they're not experts on, and if they're not familiar with, they don't know how to actually tackle that. So our solution is all in one for them. We actually launched in Dubai. So our first market was here, which is really exciting, but I'll leave that for the rest of the conversation. So I'll pass on the baton.
Should we do it hot potato style?
Sure, you go, Soraya.
Go, Soraya. Yeah. Love it.
All right. So my name is Soraya. I'm the regional manager for Crimson Education, which is an education technology company, a consultancy company. We started out helping kids get into college from New Zealand, international universities, but then we grew our tech infrastructure. We built an online school. We built education software for schools, for other entities. And I was born in Dubai, so I did not think that I was going to move back to Dubai after college. I went to Columbia and before leaving for New York, swore I never would come back. But when I got hired by Crimson, I decided it was really the right move. Dubai was perfect because of its central location to the MENA region. So we launched all of our MENA operations from here. I felt that there was a huge demand for education, but what I was seeing through a lot of interactions with students, families, schools is that while Dubai students in private schools tend to perform exceptionally well in international exams like the IB and the A-level, that's actually not represented in terms of the numbers of students who get accepted to elite universities, especially when you compare that to the numbers that apply. And so that told us that there was a strong information gap and a really good opportunity. I would say that for my bosses, the reason we expanded into Dubai was because the founder of Crimson, Jamie Beaton, incredible guy, wanted to hire me. And he always had this very deliberate approach of hiring country managers and expanding into countries based on meeting people who would be right for that job, not necessarily based on identifying a country first and then recruiting someone. So that was really probably unique to Crimson, but a core part of our growth. It was probably the wrong time because I was still in university in New York for 2 years while I launched our operations here. But for us, it was a case of now is better than never, you know, or now is better than later. So I actually worked remotely for 2 years before moving permanently back to the UAE last September.
Wow, some story there. There's Tom. Do you want to go next?
Yes, sure. Hi everyone. Thanks, Astro, for making me part of this beautiful team today. So my name is Tom Krepin, and I'm a French guy, as you can see in my accent, even if I'm trying to hide it. I've been in Dubai for the last 6 years, and I'm in charge of Daxium company for the Middle East market. And since last year, we are trying to tackle Asia as well. So Daxium is a French company. We have been created a long time ago, and 6 years ago, we decided to go abroad to extend in the Middle East. So we did this choice for many reasons that we will see later. And basically what Daxium tried to do in the region and worldwide is to help the company who has a lot of teams, especially teams in the field, to simplify the exchange of all the data that is transiting from the HQ to the ground. So today you have a lot of tools. You have WhatsApp, you have Excel, you have paper checklists, you have different type of channels. And we have created a kind of platform, cloud platform, which is linked to some mobile application. And the idea is to remove all this kind of, very, I would say, floaty channel, where we have only one way to report the data to be able to consolidate everything. So we work with field service company, we work with retail, we work with real estate. We have different kind of sectors. And Middle East has been a very strategic area for us.
Interesting. And lastly, but not leastly, Marek.
Hello, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Marek Stavinsky. I'm a founder of Navi Parking. Head office is in Poland. I'm Polish, but most of my life I spent in Holland. And my Dubai journey started exactly 4 years ago, because on 30th of September, I was on a return flight to Poland from the first visit in Dubai. What is Navi Parking? What started very small, it turned to be a kind of platform which we aim to ensure that collects all the parking data and makes this parking data available to any parties involved in a smart city ecosystem. So what we do, we digitalize parking assets, and these assets we want to propose through our API to other parties, like for example, smart mobility services, also logistics services. So in this way, we can repurpose the parking capacity, which usually in a traditional model is used by only cars. Then suddenly this capacity can be used by any parties involved. You can, for example, put the lockers there and collect, for example, goods. You can also pick up delivery, packages. You can charge your cars. We have also park and charge service. That all what we are doing, we place in a bigger context of smart city context. Why Dubai here is, I said 4 years ago, my journey started. It's a great place to be. And I think it will be later, during the session described, but it's a fantastic place where you can, drive your innovation ideas, execute those ideas, and then promote all over the world.
I think it's interesting, just building on that, Marek. I think a lot of big cities around the globe will talk about them being at the cutting edge of smart cities. But I legitimately think Dubai is one of the ones that can claim that quite honorably. I think the infrastructure, the desire to promote the kind of tech ecosystem here really drives any kind of tech solutions to be the right place. Is that kind of one of the reasons coming here?
In fact, this is absolutely true. And what happened is I was invited by organizer of conference here exactly 4 years ago to participate. And he spent a few months convincing me to come because I was really not ready for this. I thought it is too early, it's exotic place. And the moment when he called me on Friday, which is day off here, and spent an hour talking and convincing me, I decided to come. That's how it started. And indeed, it's one of the most, the smartest cities in the world with a great vision. And it's a great place if you want to do something in a context of smart city.
Interesting. So it sounded like, Marek, yourself and Soraya were pulled to Dubai from either from the conversations you had and from the event, or from your kind of background from being from the country. I suppose Adrian and Tom, were you pulled to Dubai? Was it a draw? What drew you to the city or to the opportunity?
Go ahead, Tom.
Okay, sorry. Actually, for me, it's a little bit tricky because I came to Dubai before a long time ago to study, and when I finished my study, I found an internship. So it was more kind of opportunity to start my career. But when I found Daxium, after it has been a totally other story because I was managing the company. So I got into something different where I had to use the country to grow. But I would say why Dubai, or why I've been into this. It's mostly because first, of course, our company tried to find some interesting market with some potential to go quite easy. So at the end, I was more there because of the situation. But after some time, I realized that Dubai has a lot of potential for many reasons. We will see them after. And I found it a very good strategic choice for Daxium.
And at the highest level, what was driving those strategic choices? Was it kind of is it available of staff? Is it the kind of geographic position? What was it in terms of those?
Very good. Sorry, it's still for me, or
please.
Yes. So yes, you say right. For a French company, of course, having a country where you have no tax and it's super interesting in terms of costs for your company to set up and to maintain. Then I would say also in terms of competition in our sector, we didn't really meet yet a kind of same company positions at the same level as us. So this was also interesting. And the last thing was that we had some clients in France who were set up in Dubai. So for us, it was very easy to check with them in Dubai if they would be interesting to have the same as what we have done in France. So for us, it was kind of security. We were not coming like with not knowing the market or not knowing if there is a need. We knew that potentially we could work already with 2-3 clients who could launch the market.
Interesting. And Adrian, so what was it similar to you? Was it the competition, lack of competition? Did you already have kind of identified the kind of key first clients? What was the driver for you?
Yeah, I think a couple of things happened. So one, I think in general, the market, at least in our space, a lot of partners are using a lot of legacy software and tools. And traditionally, those things end up becoming embedded, right, in their behavior patterns. And for new entrants, whether you want the buzzword being a disruptor or not, right, that can be a very strong opportunity, right? You've got people that might be using something that's 10, 15 years behind the norm. And in a lot of, other markets, those given businesses will be updating every year their particular sort of software or the thing they use to run their business. Now, that doesn't mean businesses here in Dubai are behind. It just means that a lot of times there are categories where you have a unique opportunity for that arbitrage effect, right? Where, well, hey, have you guys reviewed this in 10 years? No, we bought it once, never thought about it, right? Okay, well, have I got the tool for you, so to speak, right? I think on top of that, particularly in the last 2 to 3 years, I'd say, Dubai has really accelerated its transformation towards a digital landscape, right? Not only are customers like you and I and us on this call open and willing to pay online, use my card, don't want to have another paper slip or receipt anymore, even checkbook type of thing. But businesses are opening their eyes to the fact that this really makes our processes a lot easier, right? So a quick example I'll give from my experience both here and at Deliveroo was that a lot of people love cash. Cash is king, right? Cash, I don't have to pay a transaction fee. It's money in the door. There is a lot of cost that comes with handling cash, right? That's hidden, right? I have to have somebody physically collect it. I have to have something that physically holds it. I have to take it to the bank. Oh, one is ripped. Oh, one is considered counterfeit. Oh, and somebody didn't pay on deposit or on time. There's a lot of this hidden sort of cost that ends up there. You have to pay people to count it multiple times. So I think this is really now, those kind of things are becoming clear to businesses here. And they're realizing that being more efficient means you have funds to expand your business, not just handle the cash, so to speak, right? Just as a small example, but I think these things have happened. These things have moved a lot faster in the past 2 to 3 years than they even did a few years back in Dubai.
If I may,
I mean, I think so. Please.
Sorry, I was just going to say, it seems like one thing that's common thread amongst everything that we've all said is that Dubai is really a hub for everywhere in the Middle East. So I would be hard pressed to find a company, especially like a multinational company that operates in the Middle East that doesn't have its biggest hub in the region in Dubai. Everything from McKinsey to Uber. So like the big traditional companies and also these like really fast growing startups.
Yeah. And I think sorry, I was just going to say, a while back, a friend of mine and I were talking about kind of like why is Dubai that sort of melting pot or center point? And if you take a look at like the geographic location, right, you've got like almost 5 billion people that are within a 4, maybe 5 hour flight, right? And for a lot of those people, right, this is like that great stepping stone to either a huge market, advanced business practices, a standard of business that is acceptable for a lot of parties, both global and regional, right? Whereas in my home country, that's not easily achievable, right? So I think that's also something that's a big drawing point, right?
It's in the history actually since Sheikh Rashid, His Highness, actually created tariff-free trading, in 1971 when UAE was founded. It was automatically a trading hub. Iran, India, and kind of
right.
So it feels like the kind of digital transformation, Adrian, which you mentioned, I think is really interesting, and it's also been supported by the kind of legal and structural framework. So even something as simple as introducing VAT really improved the financial health of lots of organizations because they need to now start recording at a much greater level. So I think what's been really lucky in Dubai is going alongside the drive for tech is actually real progress in the kind of legal and structural frameworks. So yeah, I mean, I think we could talk about Dubai and why it's such an interesting hub, but want to get on to some of the other questions. So I suppose one of the questions is, we've decided on Dubai, and with any kind of new opening up into a new region, there will be some huge unknowns, some questions that you have no way of knowing, whether it be product market fit, whether it be the behaviors of local customers. I'd be interested to know what, and we'll start with you, Adrian, if you don't mind. What were the key things in terms of due diligence that you had to know the answer to? And really, if thinking about business out there that are thinking, what were the questions that you had to know as from a due diligence before you did make that jump?
Yeah, so good question. I think it depends a bit on the business, right? I would say if I was starting a new business, what I really want to look into is, okay, where does the cash flow go, right? So how am I collecting money for my service? who is my customer that's going to pay me? Am I paying out someone else, a merchant or a customer as well? Why do I say that? I think in any business, right, you can come up with a great idea. You can have an amazing product. You can have a phenomenal sales team, etc. If you're not aware or in control of where the cash is going / flowing, it won't matter, right? So I think this is an example, right? Deliveroo, one of the reasons it works is because when we as a consumer order on the app, the money's going to Deliveroo and then Deliveroo is sending it to the restaurant, right? Why does it work on Fresha? Is because the same action happens. I put my card on file, I book, I go, I pay after my treatment, but it all happens in that ecosystem, right? And I think this is where you can control a lot of that aspect, and it's a lot easier to do that in a market that's digitally first or digitally forward, like Dubai. And in order to evaluate if that's possible for your business, you've got to think, okay, where is that flow of revenue happening and how do I account for it? That'd be one. I think the other side of it is definitely looking at the competitive landscape. And I mean that both from what it is you're offering / who is in theory your customer. If you're going after these big family-owned groups like Alshaya, Altair, etc., you're going to need an entirely different sort of approach than going after small, medium businesses that might all be independent owners, right? From a variety of different cultural backgrounds, right? And they'll have different needs, they'll have different questions, they'll have different business practices. So I think that's definitely something that is to be aware of. Dubai is a very heterogeneous sort of market, right? You've got a whole skew of people that do things in a lot of different ways, which is great if you've got an opportunity that makes sense for them in different ways. But if only one group makes sense for you, then you've got to really laser in to understand what it is that you have to build for that demographic.
Interesting. Marek, what about you? What were the key due diligence points that you would have, either that you did yourself and that you would advise new businesses to do?
In my case, it was a little bit different because, as I said, I was invited to participate in this second smart parking conference in Dubai. And it was very clear to me that there is a very big opportunity here because everyone was claiming there were huge parking problems. And there was lots of interest for this, what we have presented during the conference. So in fact, it was quite easy decision for us that this is the place to be. Of course, you have to go through number of steps to understand, the local context. And in this case, at a certain moment, when I was advised, for example, when I was considering starting company, I was advised to join Astro, and it was also very, very for me important because we became immediately a part of the Astro community. And we were exposed through all kinds of different conferences to, right players here on the market. So that was from our perspective. What I wanted to stress here, if you have a really good product and a good idea, you have to be aware that in Dubai, in DNA of Dubai people is innovation. And is also supporting this innovation. It comes from the top level of the, from the prime minister down to organization, that if you have any idea, you are promoted by bringing forward person you come across with this idea to your boss and boss of the boss. So very fast, and it was in our case, we were exposed to the highest level of the, here organizations in Dubai. So my recommendation is that you should really, if you are, having a good product you believe in and you think it's really unique, you should come here because Dubai wants to be first in any type of innovation. If they think that you can help with that objective, all the doors will be open.
Really interesting. Soraya, what about you in terms of the kind of due diligence? Again, a little bit slightly different in your situation, but I suppose, what were the kind of key things you did? And if you used any specifically tools or ways of doing it, for example, market research, if there was any tricks in there specifically would be useful as well, interested.
Yeah, I mean, so I kind of went through, we created an S&M model where we looked at everything. We did competitor analysis, market sizing, very, very difficult because, I mean, we have quite a diversified product. So there'd be market sizing for tutoring, for schooling, for consulting, for athletics. And so that, I mean, that's always going to be a little bit of a shot in the dark. There is a process, but it's probably, you know, not very close to being right. And I think I consumed a lot of surveys. I found that my experience was a little bit different. I think definitely there's a hunger and an appetite for innovation, but it probably is quite dependent on the industry. Parking is something, for instance, that everyone needs and every city needs. And it really depends on what a society is prioritizing. So I found that within education, surveys were quite old. And that made things really difficult, and it was quite hard to find actually the information that we needed. So it really did take a lot of time and take a lot of effort, and was our best guess at what the market size was going to be. So yeah, I mean, we ended up achieving our target in the first year around about, but then, you know, once we had that year of experience, we grew by about 300%. So I think the best way to learn to get a sense in Dubai is really just to get here, try it out, and then iterate, because it can be very difficult.
Interesting. Tom, what about you?
Yeah. So us, for the due diligence, what we did is we contacted in our network some people who were like already based in Dubai and also knew about our kind of target and also about the software industry. So the discussion was about like the competition. Is there needs in the region, or is there it's too early or it's too late? So we tried really to understand this. Then we had another part because we are in the software, so in cloud and with data, etc. So we had to be sure also about the regulation in the Middle East about data protection, where the data has to be hosted, because this can be also you can arrive in a country, if you have a lot of regulation, it can complicate the process to set up. So this was a third part. And then, of course, the due diligence was also about the geography, as we spoke, because we had previously the vision to go in Asia. So we had to go somewhere where it could be strategic between Europe and in Asia. So that's why Dubai has been selected in the most easy country to do both. So this kind of stuff. But of course, when we started, we didn't take all the cases. You know, like it's quite complicated to arrive at a point when you know you're going to be successful. So there is always a little bit of uncertainty, but after, if the job is done, maybe it's going to be successful.
Yeah, I think if anyone is, as an entrepreneur, wants a 100% secure option, they're probably not in the right business, because I think uncertainty is by definition what we all have to live with daily. And I love the old saying about, and if you're not embarrassed about your MVP, you've waited too long to release it. You know, sometimes you just have to be there and do that. And I think you brought up a really interesting point around network and the value in network and being able to speak to people over a coffee. You know, that I think is a really rich part of what Astrolabs can bring. So just to staying with you, Tom, I suppose. So we've decided you're coming to Dubai. You get off the plane. What are the first kind of 3, 4, 5 things you want to do really to kind of hit the ground running and accelerate? You know, what is it? Customer growth? Is it kind of understanding the legals? What were the key 5 things you were looking at the start?
Yeah, the first thing I did was first to understand how the country is organized. You know, what are the main area? What is the main actor in the region? So more on the general landscape, and then I very fast met some people from French embassy because they were here and they knew company like us who were coming to Dubai and they knew about French regulation. So my first drive was there. So we discussed about many things: setup of the company, find the new clients, what's the process for a company like us, because they have a big experience. And of course, after was a place to work, because we were going to hire quite fast. So a place to work. I found very fast Astrolab, of course, and I stayed because I'm still there today. So congrats, Astrolab. And and of course, like the I would say during the installation, the most important was to meet people. So I was constantly trying to attend conference, to attend workshops, network events, trying to really like embed myself in the community about the tech and also about the sector of my clients, to be really like, you know, in direct interaction with the most people possible.
Really interesting. Marek, what about you? The the 3, 4, 5 things that you did when you landed.
Now, when I landed the very first time, I was advised that I had to order Uber, and the result was that we couldn't find each other for half an hour. So I spent much more money at the airport, you know, on this Uber than the price of RTA. So my advice is the transportation in Dubai is excellent, and it's really very you know, cost effective. So RTA is waiting for you, RTA taxi outside airport. So don't really try to get any other transportation. But regarding the business, as I said, we were attending number of conferences. So these conferences help us a lot to learn the context of the business here in Dubai. So when I decided to start a company in Dubai, we were pretty well prepared. So it was already well thought through decision. So my advice would be, if you are considering, you know, moving here, it would be the best thing would be to attend one another conference, which is, you know, in your business domain, because it's great for networking. And as I said, Emirati here, you know, they are so keen, you know, to promote innovation. So if they see that you have really great product to propose, you know, here on the market, they will help you. They will help you, and they will introduce you to other people. So, you know, this happened with me. So I have to say, I had a pleasure to meet lots of great Emirati people here, which open doors to different type of organization. And I think it's essential for success of your business.
Interesting. The theme seems to be that network, as a, you know, you need to have those links. Is that what you found, Adrian, when you landed, or what were the kind of key first steps you'll be focusing on?
Yeah, I think one thing that I really enjoyed is that, generally speaking, everyone here is really excited to make opportunities happen, right? So whether it's in a great location like Astro Labs, where you're meeting other like-minded people who have businesses that might be similar to you, or you're just out at a restaurant or a bar or at an event, everyone knows that like we're here to get things done. And I think that's a really exciting vibe and side of Dubai that you don't see in a lot of cities, right? So, you know, I grew up near Boston. You go to New York, San Francisco, London. It's hard to break into the cliques that have already succeeded.
Yes.
Right? Those people are already successful, right? And they usually kind of keep you out, right? A little bit, maybe not on purpose, but just by default. And whereas here I find not only meeting people, but then talking with them about opportunities is generally a lot more fruitful and leads to something rather than just yeah, right? So that's one aspect I would say. If you're new to Dubai, whether as a business or individual, just go out and meet somebody. You never know who they're going to be from any side of the table.
So that kind of action-oriented, people here want to make things happen. Yeah. I think that's really interesting. Adrian, if I was in your group, I'd have, of course, let you in. You could have joined our clique in London.
I appreciate that, Sarah.
Soraya, what about you in terms of you know, the kind of key things that we landed? Obviously, you had a longer lead up in terms of remotely for 2 years, so it was a very different approach.
Yeah, look, I second what Adrian said about networking. I think the best way to approach networking is not necessarily, to see it as transactional, like I'm going to meet you and I want something from you, or I'm going to give you something, but really just build up that community of that network that you have, because eventually it's going to pay off, and you're not going to get something from everyone. But if you're, genuinely interested in connecting people and meeting with people and giving value to people, then you'll find that it does pay off. I actually found that when I focus more on what we do and what I needed from people, I didn't get the same results. But when I was really able to connect people and actually, meet someone and be like, oh, you're working on this thing. I know this person. They're working on something similar. Or they're working on something complementary. Maybe you two should meet. You have a much better chance of getting what you need in the long run, because you're just constantly providing value to people. I suppose when we started, it was unusual because I was like the lone wolf. We have quite a number of people in the team now, but it was just me for a long time. I actually hired my mum to help out with some stuff, so that was fun. But I wasn't here. So the tactics that we had to use to launch remotely were very different than if someone was here planted on the ground, but they worked. So we relied on a lot of expos. So Dubai seems to be a hub for that. You have GTEx, GITEx, and and lots of education fairs and things like that. I would say when you have a solid pipeline and like a strong volume of leads for business coming in, then maybe those expos aren't ideal, because it's such high volume and you have to really filter through a lot of leads to get people who are actually suitable for your business. But when you're just starting out, or if you're testing out a new market and you just have 5 days a month to go to market and actually interact with people, then expos are a really perfect way to do that. You'll have like 10,000 people talking with you over a period of a couple of days. So I used to come from New York every month for like 3 or 4 days and then go back to class, straight off the plane, basically.
So one of the questions I think that we slightly unsaid behind all of this is funding and money. So obviously starting into a new region, there's a couple of different approaches. I mean, it always feels like bootstrapping is much easier to do in your own country, because you kind of know the world, you kind of know the when with your experience and even just slightly wider, do you think funding is something you need to have secured prior to coming here? Do you think there is opportunities to bootstrap, to look at kind of keeping it as a side hustle? What would your advice be? Marek, should we start with you?
Oh, yes, it's a good question. One thing you have to be aware of that, the whole process to start something is quite lengthy, despite of the fact that, as I said, everyone is very keen on innovation, but still you need to address all kinds of, I would say, procedures in order to get things agreed and started. So you need to have enough funding to pay all the costs, all the running costs, and especially in our domain, smart parking also requires some investment in infrastructure. So it's not only just software. So so my advice is that it's good to have a partner, or be prepared that you have enough, funding to reach the first, delivery of your phase of your product. So that would be my advice.
Adrian?
Yeah, good question. I think definitely the environment around funding has got a lot more friendly in the past couple of years. I think traditionally the mindset was very much from the period of time where like you had a trading kind of business where, okay, you have a good, I'm going to purchase it and then I'm going to go sell it, right? So the idea is that this is a tangible item that I'm paying and transferring currency for. And I think it's taken a little while, but Dubai is certainly the one in the region that has moved the farthest, in the sort of mindset shift that says, I may not be buying a tangible product today, but what I am buying is this amazing growth or opportunity to access a new sector or a new part of the market that didn't exist before, right? So, one example I always think of is like the food delivery game, right? Here, food delivery was like 5-6 years ahead of anywhere else, right? And if you talk to someone in the Western market, they're surprised about that, right? And I think there are angles here that are actually quite far ahead, so to speak. But with the funding aspect of that has happened, I think, in the last 2 to 4 years, where businesses are looking at it going, okay, we do need to invest in these things going forward, not just doing this sort of trading sort of mentality. To answer the direct question, yeah, be prepared to have a bit more cash than you imagined. I think that's safe to say anywhere, but certainly in the Middle East and in the region, there's always something in the works that you got to be prepared for. Oh, it's a little extra here, a little extra there, but I think a lot of businesses are wisening up to that as well. So,
interesting. Tom, what about you in terms of funding?
Yeah, so for us it was a little bit different because we are a business unit from a group. So in terms of funding cash, it's a little bit different because we are kind of protected by the HQ. But my experience was if I built the company from scratch here, I would have. We are working with big companies, so the deals that we are signing are generally like between 6 months, 8 months, can be very, very long, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of involvement from the team. So imagine if you don't have any cash, you have to wait 6 months to sign the deal, and then you have maybe 2 months, 3 months to be paid. So imagine the time you need. So it depends, I think, of the industry as well, because some industry you can strike the market, be on the market very fast, generate cash, maybe not everything to cover costs, but at least something. In some other industry, you need to wait to get a big amount of cash to cover the cost that you have already paid. So I would say if you are in the software, you want to target kind of a big company, big contracts, be ready and have a little bit of cash in advance to survive. This is my advice here.
And I suppose that links nicely to what Adrian said at the very beginning about understanding your cash flows. And part of understanding cash flows is that, there's the basic cash flow model, which says, this is what we expect, but then also setting it in the cultural context of the new organization where, cash collection in the region is more difficult than it is, say, in the UK. I know that for sure. So making sure that you're factoring all of those cultural aspects of the business into the cash flow profile and very quickly understanding, how much runway that you have. I think there's that mentality is you need to have enough cash until you can raise more cash, and working in those kind of short sprints seems to be the way. But I think it's really positive what Adrian was saying, that the funding environment here is opening up, and I think we're seeing that quite a lot of that. I know in our community there are 10 or 12 who right now are about to close deals of significant money, and I think even we haven't mentioned it yet, but the big C word that's going around the world, there still is opportunity here, which I think is really, really positive for businesses. So we've talked about lots of positive things. I suppose there is also the hurdles and obstacles of starting both in a new region and in Dubai. So obviously you've got a long background with Dubai. I'd love to hear your interest about, what do you think are some of the hurdles that businesses either expanding or setting up here will face?
I think, some of them relate to your previous question about funding and cash flow and being factoring in culture or the cultural environment or cultural context into calculation. So for instance, there is an installment culture here. We notice our market and the way people like to pay here is probably more similar to our consumers in Brazil than the United States. And as you mentioned, debt collection, not really very easy to do. I think things are definitely changing. When I was younger, we didn't have a mall actually up until Mall of the Emirates in 2006. So it was definitely different. I know that Astro Labs is a big part of this change and an example of the change as well, because licensing, for example. Traditionally, very, very rigid, very expensive, and unlike in many other countries in the world, primarily tied to office space. So we chose to I guess enter Astro Labs because we were always a remote-driven company, just because of the nature of how our business works, and we'd been doing this for years. And that was something that wasn't really possible, or wasn't really easy to find in the UAE. Astro Labs is a perfect example of a more remote, flexible structure, right? You have the space, but it wasn't like you had to invest in this huge office in order to get a license. Now, I think that can be really hard for startups. I've set up startups in the US where you pay like $500 to set up a Delaware corporation, and that's it. You're kind of good to go. I think also the market is really, really differentiated. In the education space, we have 17 different curricula that schools operate from. Some of them are a bit less rare, but you still have a good, 5 or 6 that are very common. French, Indian, IB, A-level, AP, Emirati national curriculum, right? Very, very common curricula. And to your point, Adrian, about food delivery being really advanced in the UAE, it is so primarily because we have a large Indian population, for instance, and they kind of lead the market for food delivery, have been doing it even before the technology was there.
Yeah.
And I guess contrary to your experience, Marek, we found that at least some of our consumers were very used to doing things in a traditional way, and I think people wanted to really be convinced that there was another way to do something, at least in the education space, understandably. So yeah, expensive. Sometimes it can be confusing because if you know that you're going to set up a business in one particular country, maybe like in France, for instance, there are pretty clear rules and guidelines that you follow, and it's going to be like this, and it's going to take this long. And Dubai can be a little bit more difficult in that way. So I think really relying on community, making sure you have people who've gone through it, who can help you, who can support you, is super, super important.
Interesting. Tom, what about you in terms of some of the obstacles and hurdles?
Yeah, I think it's yes, I have similar experience than Soraya. When we created the company with my ex-manager, we were discovering this setup in Dubai. So what we did is we managed to when we were here in Astro Lab, we were trying to go and see people and ask how they have done it, how they fill this paper, for example, of this kind of process. So this was super useful because, to be honest, we were already in the business and we couldn't spend too much time to set up everything. So this has been a very a big added value for us. And then in terms of more operation stuff, which has been a little bit complex, was like when we arrived in Dubai, we were not ready in terms of kind of marketing presentation to tackle the market. We didn't have the presentation in English, for example. We had to kind of rebuild a little bit what has been done in France, but adapt it to the market. So we had to do this. And then I would say the second big stuff was for some companies that we were meeting, because Dubai is a big hub and you have totally company coming from everywhere. Sometimes we had to adapt a lot to the mentality. Even if when we were doing the presentation, the feedback was totally not the same when you were presenting to French company, to a local company. So we had to be very flexible in terms of who we meet. So this was kind of first obstacle.
I mean, I think that one of the things that we try to do at Astro Labs, and this is a shameless plug, is to take away some of the friction of operations, so that that the businesses in our community can concentrate on their sector and their growth. We can support with the kind of the nuts and bolts and really give our companies and our members the chances to actually spend their time focusing on the more important parts of growth in their specific businesses. Marek, what about your experience in terms of the kind of the big things? I know you've mentioned a couple of them already. Is there anything else that you think it's worth mentioning in terms of kind of very specific obstacles and challenges that you may face, new entrants might face in the region?
I think most of the observation I had, they were already shared, by attendees of this panel. What I could, maybe once again re-emphasize that it's very important to build a local community network with the local people, and indeed take into consideration that everything takes time. It's like when you agree something, it doesn't mean that this is going to happen that particular date. You should take into consideration that it can be yet another week or maybe 2 weeks more. So you need to have patience and be, persistent. And so it's a little bit different way of managing, the whole process, not like maybe in Europe. Here it's all about personal contacts. You need to talk to people. It's, per email, for example, you cannot, arrange too many things. The best is just to go for a dinner, for example, to meet people. I go for a dinner, by the way, tonight. So this is how it works. So that's my advice. These are the not obstacles. I would say different ways of working and managing the business. It's in fact, it's also nice sites. Like for example, nice dinner. Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. I think in almost every culture, food is such an incredible trust builder. Feels like, going back to, breaking bread together is seen as the thing to do. And I think definitely in Dubai and the Arabic culture, it's really, really important that people want those face-to-face contacts. And I think, that plays into the fact that to a certain extent, being in the country is an important aspect of growth here, is because you need to, walk the walk physically here, have those meetings. I think much more than maybe I've seen in other countries. There is a need to be in the space.
And that's it's really nice. It's really nice to build relationships with people.
I like it. I love it. To be honest, for me, it's great. This was the very first time when I was invited home by Emirati, for dinner. I was not really aware that this is like a great honor. When you are invited, then there is no way to say no. So it's something very nice, and very often it's like you have this shared menu. You share the food, and you build up a kind of very nice relationship during the ceremony. So it's great. I like it.
I think we've just conscious of time. It's we've got a few minutes more left, but I think we've picked up on some really interesting factors. The tech growth of the tech market here, the fact that it is a great tech city. I think behavior change is going to be difficult in any region, and there are behaviors here which some are in front of the curve and some behind the curve, and I think that creates a really amazing opportunity. I am going to take some questions, so if anyone wants to drop a question in the chat, please do. We've already received one. And then I've got one other, my last question to all of you, just to have it in the back of your minds, is, what would be your one bit of advice? The one, we've talked about cash flow, we've talked about understanding the local context. What would be the one thing, the one thing, if you were speaking to somebody who's looking to come to Dubai, the one thing that they should definitely do, or the one thing that they need to know about? While you're mulling on that, I'll just take a question. So the question is, how much do you rely on social media in the marketing, and what is the main platform they use for marketing? So I suppose this question is asking about, once you're here and you want to build your customer base and your brand awareness, was social media a bit as big as you would expect it to be? Is it bigger here than maybe the European or the American markets? Soraya, do you want to start with this one?
Yeah, for us, absolutely huge. We have the highest ROI on digital marketing in Crimson UAE than all of our other 25 countries that we operate in. It's about 15 times ROI per dollar spent. But also like YouTube ads and also YouTube organic Facebook and Instagram are huge. I don't know if the software question was about what we advertise on, but primarily Facebook and Instagram, and that's advertising campaigns, events, and so on. And then the software, the backend software, Marketo would be.
Interesting. Adrian?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think for us, the social media angle, I think by choice has been a little less of a focus on our end. We focus a lot more on the sort of sales and account management operational aspect of our business. But I think one thing that I would keep in mind here is that social media is definitely a huge part of people's time, right? Like the average number of hours spent on the mobile phone in UAE is like 6.5 hours, in terms of like a given period, which is considerably more than a lot of other markets. And then secondly, certain channels have a lot more weight in terms of their attention than other markets. So as an example, Snapchat has been historically very popular here in the Middle East, where it was popular in the Western markets, but not quite the same, right? In terms of overall attention, the slice of the pie from an attention perspective. So I think evaluate for your business, for your brand, what channel you think actually has that return, and I would do some tests on it, right? Because ultimately, not every channel will have the same ROI, right, to invest in.
Marek?
Yeah, it's interesting. Our observation was when we posted, for example, on LinkedIn, a new role that we are looking for someone, then here from Dubai in the region, we got amazing number of responses, like I think 250 in 2 days. At the same time, in Poland, were like 5. So most of the followers, I think, of Navi Parking on LinkedIn are coming from Dubai and the region. So that shows, how active people are here on social media.
Just Tom, I'm going to slightly add something to the question. I suppose this is quite an interesting. Again, it came from the audience. With marketing, for example, or finance or other aspects of the business, when you first launched, did you look to bring in agencies? Did you look to have in-house kind of straight away? How did that structure happen in terms of the balance between outsourcing and bringing in your own team?
Question to me?
I was going to be sorry, it was to Tom.
For the social media or for everything?
More generally. So when you started, I mean, there's that growth period where at the beginning you're there by yourself. You may probably use consultants and contractors and bring in agencies more often, and then as you grow, you bring things in house. Was that the kind of the trend that you saw?
Again, we had a kind of basis in France, so we had some support already. But I would say to set up the company, this was something that we require some help. Like to set up the company. But in terms of in the business, not really, because our business doesn't require a lot of outsourcing, I would say.
Right.
So
interesting. Okay, so you've all had a couple of seconds to think about it, and that's all you're going to get. So to finish, firstly, just like to say thank you so much for all your time. Really appreciate. I think it's been super interesting for me. I've made loads of notes that I'm going to take back and mull over. If anyone on the call or anyone watching live is interested in setting up a business, please reach out to us at Astro Labs. We are here to help, both in terms of helping to make the decision. Our kind of setup executives will talk you through different options, whether that be free zone, mainland. We are here to help build the ecosystem, and part of our community is being open to all. So please do contact us if you're interested. So the one bit of advice you would give businesses looking to come to Dubai would be, Adrian?
Ooh, tough. I think I'd probably add on to what Soraya mentioned earlier, is that if you're going to come to Dubai, don't look at it as a transaction. Don't look at it as, I'm here because I'm going to make a bunch of money and leave. One, that probably won't happen, right? Although I wish everyone the best of luck. But two, if you come into it with that mentality, Dubai won't reward you the same way that if you're here to invest and make that place holistically more valuable. And I think a lot of people historically like misjudge it. They come here for that transaction and then they kind of skip town afterwards when they think the quick buck didn't arrive. The buck is there, you just have to commit to it. So,
and having that strategic, I mean, Tom mentioned that it's a strategic hub to grow from rather than just to come and drain from. I think that is really interesting. Yeah. Soraya, what about yourself?
So if you're from a company that's based somewhere else, and I guess that's who this is addressed to, right? I would make a really strong case to your head office. A lot of things are very different here than they would be anywhere else. So especially for your HR teams, they're going to be probably quite confused about the process, employment contracts, visas, everything here is different. Like culture is different too, but there is a lot of reward for actually doing it right and building a successful business here. So really be diligent, use your numbers, go to your head office, make the case to open here because it is very rewarding, but just be aware that it's going to be, you know, pretty exceptional to and different to a lot of other markets.
Marek?
Yeah, I would like to refer to what you just said. Is indeed you should ensure that you have a trusted party which will take care of all these complexities of HR, visa, and all these you know, regulations, because it's quite a lot of headache. So I was advised by Astro Labs to reach out to one company, and they helped me from the very beginning because, you know, I would not be able to do it by myself, or if I would do it, it would take me much more time. So you need to have a trusted party which take care of all these, you know, procedures, HR processes, visa, and so on.
And I'm glad you think Astro Labs is that trusted partner, and we're pleased to have you as part of our community. Tom.
So of course I totally agree with everything you said, Hall. I would recommend for sure to maybe prepare the field, you know, like to have a kind of huge list of questions, be in touch with people in the city, get in touch with a company like Astro Labs for simplifying a lot of process, administrative, and even more, because they can advise you on many other things than only the process of the license and stuff. So I think this is very important to accelerate your setup, and maybe like the part of the cash is also one of the recommendation to not arrive with nothing, maybe to have kind of security. This I insist because I got some experience that I realized that if I was alone and I was waiting for the money to come, like it was quite long. So this was my feedback.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you very much, everyone. I think there were some really incredible nuggets in there. I really hope we're helping people kind of make that jump. I think we all say with a smile on our face that it is hard work, but super exciting coming to Dubai, what it has to offer, both in terms of opportunity for a business, but also for the people in the city. So thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it, and thank you for everyone who joined. Hopefully it was interesting for everyone. And I will leave it at that. So thank you, everyone. Please stay safe and look after yourselves, and hope to speak to all of you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye. See you. Bye-bye.
Take care.
I can really recommend Astro Labs. Anyone still on the call, definitely go for it.
Yeah.
Take care, guys.
Thank you.